The Millionaire's Triple Miracle. A millionaire, 3 strangers, and a guitar. Stop scrolling. The millionaire, seeking peace after a grueling trip, wandered into a park, only to find his ex-wife busking with 2 children, who were the spitting image of him. His heart pounded with disbelief and an urgent need to know, are these my children? He moved in, determined to confront her and find the truth. Drop a like and tell us what city you're watching from now. Let's continue with the story. The autumn sun bathed the Los Angeles skyscrapers in a golden, melancholic light as Marcus Sterling stepped out of a cab across from Griffith Park. Dressed in a flawlessly tailored Italian suit, he adjusted the Patek Philippe on his wrist, a gift to himself, celebrating his latest business triumph. At 42, Marcus had achieved everything he'd ever dreamed of: a formidable fortune, international recognition, and the freedom to do whatever he wanted, whenever he wanted. 5 years had passed since he left the West Coast, determined to expand his business horizons. New York had been his home during that time, and now, returning to Los Angeles, he felt a strange blend of familiarity and dislocation. The city was still chaotic, vibrant, and imposing in its essence. But something within him had profoundly changed. He decided to walk through the park, something he hadn't done in years. In New York, his contact with nature was limited to timed morning runs in Central Park, always with specific fitness goals. Here, for the first time in a long time, he allowed himself to wander aimlessly. The scent of eucalyptus trees and the distant hum of the city created an almost dreamlike atmosphere. He watched families strolling, couples sitting on the grass, and children running with colorful kites. An uncomfortable sensation began to manifest in his chest, something he couldn't name, but that deeply bothered him. Perhaps it was the simplicity of those scenes, so far removed from the world of corporate meetings and multi-million-dollar negotiations he was used to. He sat on a bench near the lake, unbuttoning his jacket and allowing himself to relax a little. His phone vibrated in his pocket, likely another message from his advisors about the new acquisition he was planning. He ignored it. For the first time in years, Marcus felt the weight of silence. Not the silence of soundproofed offices, but the inner silence that allows long-suppressed thoughts to surface. He remembered Clara Hayes, his ex-wife. The last time he saw her was during the signing of the divorce papers 5 years ago. She was pregnant then, but he was so consumed by his international projects that he barely paid attention to that detail. Now, sitting on that park bench, the memory hit him with unexpected force. The soft sound of a guitar began to play in the distance, bringing a familiar melody to his ears. It was a song he used to listen to with Clara in the early years of their marriage, when they still lived in a small apartment and dreamed of the future together. The coincidence made his heart beat faster, and he found himself following the direction of the sound almost instinctively. As he approached the music's source, the world around him seemed to slow down. Among the trees, a small crowd formed around a busker. Marcus approached, more out of curiosity than anything else. That's when his entire stopped. Sitting on a small wooden stool, with a worn guitar in her hands, was Clara. Her hair, once always immaculately styled, was pulled into a messy bun. Her simple clothes contrasted sharply with the memory Marcus held of her. But what impacted him most were her eyes. Those same brown eyes that had once enchanted him, now etched with deep exhaustion. Next to her, 3 children, who couldn't have been more than 4 or 5 years old, were playing while she performed. 2 girls and 1 boy, all with features that made Marcus's heart skip a beat. It was like looking into a mirror of the past. The same eyes, the same face shape. Even the smile was identical to his own when he was a child. The air seemed to leave his lungs. People around them continued their lives normally, applauding the music, tossing a few coins into the hat placed in front of Clara. But for Marcus, time had frozen. His world, so carefully constructed with professional successes and material conquests, began to crumble in front of that scene. Clara hadn't noticed him yet, focused on her music and the children. Marcus stood there, paralyzed, while an avalanche of thoughts and emotions overwhelmed him. The children, his children, he now realized, continued playing, oblivious to the presence of the man who was their father, a stranger who had never been part of their lives. The music ended, and the applause from the small audience brought Marcus back to reality. Some people dispersed, others approached to compliment Clara or request songs. But it was then that their eyes met. The recognition in her eyes was immediate, followed by a mixture of surprise and something deeper, an old pain that Marcus had never truly understood until that moment. The children, sensing the change in their mother's expression, stopped playing and looked in Marcus's direction. Their small faces, so much like his own, watched him with natural childish curiosity, unaware that they were facing their father. The moment seemed to stretch infinitely, weighted with 5 years of absence, of choices not made, of ignored responsibilities. Marcus Sterling, the successful businessman who had conquered the world, had never felt so small as in that instant. His entire empire, built with so much effort and dedication, seemed insignificant compared to the magnitude of what he had lost, or rather, what he had chosen to abandon. The silence between Marcus and Clara lasted only a few seconds, but it felt like an eternity. The children, feeling the tension in the air, instinctively moved closer to their mother, clinging to her legs as they watched the stranger in the expensive suit, staring at them with unsettling intensity. Clara was the first to break the silence. With a controlled voice that barely conveyed the tempest of emotions consuming her, she addressed the children. "Owen, Liam, Grace, why don't you go play near that bench for a bit? Mommy needs to talk to this gentleman." The children hesitated for a moment but obeyed, moving a few feet away, still casting curious glances in Marcus's direction. "So, you came back?" Clara said, beginning to pack the guitar into its case. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice held a firmness Marcus hadn't expected. 5 years is a long time, Marcus. Marcus swallowed hard, his eyes flickering between Clara and the children playing nearby. "I didn't know. The words felt inadequate, too small to express the whirlwind of emotions consuming him. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" A bitter smile touched Clara's lips. "Never told you?" She paused, taking a deep breath before continuing. "I tried to tell you in every way possible, Marcus. Calls, emails, letters. I even went to your office several times, but your staff always said you were in a meeting or traveling. After a while, I understood that you had chosen your path, and it didn't include us." Clara's words hit Marcus like a blow to the stomach. He vaguely recalled his secretary mentioning his ex-wife's attempts to contact him, but he was always too busy with mergers, acquisitions, and international meetings to pay attention. He had instructed his team to filter out any non-strictly professional contact. Are they triplets?" Marcus asked, observing the children who were now playing tag, their laughter echoing through the park. "They are," Clara replied, a touch of pride momentarily softening her expression. "Owen was born first, then Liam, and Grace last. They're 4.5 now." She paused, looking directly into Marcus's eyes. "They were born 3 months after you left for New York." Marcus sat heavily on the bench next to her, feeling the weight of every decision he had made in the last 5 years. He watched the children more closely. Owen, with his quieter demeanor, held a children's book while trying to dodge his siblings. Liam ran with infinite energy, leading the game. And Grace, with a small sketch pad hugged to her chest, alternated between joining the chase and making quick drawings. How have you managed? Marcus asked, noticing for the first time the details that had previously escaped his eye. The discreet patch on one of the children's backpacks, Clara's worn shoes, the guitar that clearly needed maintenance. Surviving, Clara replied simply. I teach music classes at a few schools during the week, and on weekends I play here in the park to supplement our income. It's not easy, but the children have never gone to bed hungry, and we manage the basics. The simplicity of that answer made Marcus feel even smaller. While he celebrated multi-million-dollar deals with champagne in Manhattan penthouses, his children were growing up dependent on their mother's street performance income. Clara, I can help. I can make up for all that time, Marcus began, but was interrupted by a firm gesture from her. It's not about money, Marcus. It never was. She looked at the children with a mix of love and protection. They grew up without knowing their father, but they grew up knowing they are loved. We built our own family, our own world. But I am their father, Marcus argued, his voice conveying an urgency he didn't expect to feel. I have the right to. Rights? Clara interrupted him, her voice even lower, but heavy with emotion. What rights do you think you retained after 5 years of complete absence? You don't even know their full names, their personalities, their fears, their joys. You weren't there when Owen had pneumonia at age 2 and had to be hospitalized. You didn't see Liam take his first steps, or hear Grace sing for the first time. Marcus felt every word as a stab. Images of what could have been flooded his mind. Him holding the babies for the first time, sleepless nights caring for fevers, first smiles, first words. Precious moments he had exchanged for board meetings and financial reports. Give me a chance, he pleaded, his voice almost a whisper. Not for who I was, but for who I can be from now on. Clara watched the children for a long moment before responding. It's not a simple decision, Marcus. I can't risk them getting attached to you and then you disappearing again when a business opportunity pops up on the other side of the world. I've changed, Marcus insisted, though he knew how hollow those words sounded after so long. Prove it, Clara replied simply, starting to gather her things. But prove it for them, not for me. And remember, if you choose to be part of their lives now, there's no middle ground. You're either fully present, or it's better to stay as you are. The children, sensing their mother was getting ready to leave, began to approach. Marcus felt his heart race seeing them up close. Every tiny detail of their faces seemed to scream his paternity. Owen's eye shape, Liam's mischievous grin, Grace's delicate chin. Let's go, kids, Clara called, extending her hands to them. It's getting late. Before they left, she took a small piece of paper from her pocket and wrote down an address. This is our apartment. If you really want to try, show up tomorrow at 9 in the morning. That's when I usually take the kids to the morning cafe at the corner bakery. Marcus took the paper with trembling hands, watching as Clara and the children walked away through the park. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of orange, and for the first time in his life, Marcus Sterling felt that all his professional successes were worth nothing compared to what he had lost, and what he now had the chance to regain. The bridge of trust. A new routine. Marcus spent a sleepless night in his penthouse in Beverly Hills. The address Clara had scribbled burning on his nightstand. The luxury apartment, decorated by one of LA's most renowned architects, now felt cold and empty. Every expensive and exclusive object around him told the story of a man who had prioritized appearance and status over real connections. At 7 in the morning, after hours staring at the king-sized bed, Marcus was already up. For the first time in years, he ignored his morning routine of checking emails and stock quotes. Instead of his usual Italian suit, he opted for casual clothes. Jeans, a polo shirt, and comfortable shoes. Looking in the mirror, he tried to imagine how the children would see him. The address Clara provided led him to a modest neighborhood in West LA. The contrast with his reality was striking. Simple buildings, local shops, people waiting for the bus on the sidewalks. He parked his Mercedes a block away, suddenly self-conscious about how much his car stood out in the neighborhood. He arrived at the bakery, indicated on the paper, 20 minutes before the agreed time. It was a small but cozy establishment, with formica tables and the unmistakable aroma of fresh bread in the air. He chose a discreet table near the hallway, where he could observe the entrance without being immediately noticed. Punctually at 9 a.m., Clara appeared with the children. Owen carried a small backpack with books. Liam held his mother's hand while bouncing energetically, and Grace, with a colorful clip in her hair, hugged a sketch pad. The everyday scene made Marcus's heart ache. How many mornings like this had he missed? "Good morning," Marcus said, standing up eagerly as they approached. The children looked at him curiously, but without recognition. "Kids," Clara began, her voice soft but firm. "This is Julian. He's a friend of mine, and he's joining us for breakfast today." Marcus felt the weight of that incomplete introduction, but understood Clara's caution. It wouldn't be fair to bombard the children with the truth before proving his intentions. Grace was the first to speak, her curious eyes studying Marcus's face. "Do you like drawing?" I'm not very good at it, actually," Marcus replied, feeling strangely nervous about the simple question. "I can teach you," she offered enthusiastically, already opening her notebook. "Look, I drew our family yesterday." The drawing showed 4 stick figures: Clara, recognizable by her long hair, and the 3 children, each with a distinctive feature: a book, a ball, and a crayon. Marcus noted the empty space next to them on the paper, feeling the weight of his absence, even in his daughter's childish art. Liam, who had been watching Marcus with interest, suddenly asked, "Can you play soccer?" "I know a little," Marcus replied, recalling his childhood afternoons of pickup games, long before he replaced fields with boardrooms. "Awesome! We could play sometime," Liam exclaimed, his eyes shining with the possibility of a new friendship. Owen, the quietest of the 3, stayed close to his mother, observing everything with attentive eyes behind his small glasses. Marcus noticed he was clutching a children's storybook, the pages visibly worn from use. "What book is that, Owen?" Marcus asked gently. "The Little Prince," Owen replied softly. "It's my favorite." "That's a beautiful story," Marcus commented, vaguely remembering reading the book in his own childhood. "What's your favorite part?" Owen's face lit up slightly, and he began to explain The Little Prince's rose and how important it was to care for the things we love. The irony of the lesson did not escape Marcus. Clara watched the interaction in silence, her face a mask of contained emotions. Marcus could see in her a mix of maternal protection and a glimmer of reluctant hope. The breakfast passed surprisingly naturally. The children, with their characteristic innocence, quickly grew used to Marcus's presence, bombarding him with questions about his life and sharing small stories from their daily routines. Marcus discovered that Owen dreamed of being a writer and already created his own stories in a special notebook. Liam revealed his love for all ends of sports, especially soccer, and how he dreamed of playing professionally. Grace, between sips of hot chocolate, showed off her drawing pages, each accompanied by an elaborate story she invented. When it was time to leave, as the children had classes, Marcus felt a pang of sadness. It was incredible how in just a few hours, these little beings had managed to penetrate the armor he had built over the years. "Are you coming back?" Liam asked hopefully, while Clara helped Grace put away her art supplies. Marcus looked at Clara for some sign of approval. She nodded slightly. "I am," he replied firmly, feeling the responsibility of every word. "And if your mother allows it, I'd like to, very much." "How about Sunday?" Clara suggested, surprising both Marcus and the children. "We'll go to the park again. The children love to play there. Sunday would be perfect, Marcus replied, trying to keep the excitement out of his voice. As he watched Clara and the children walk away toward the school, Marcus took out his phone and did something he never imagined doing. He canceled all his meetings for the following week. For the first time in his life, there was something more important than business to attend to. On his way back to his apartment, Marcus stopped at a bookstore and bought 3 new copies of The Little Prince, one for each child. On the first page of each book, he wrote a small dedication, promising himself that this time he wouldn't let anything in the world be more important than his family. The confession and the test of fire, the days following the breakfast, were the longest of Marcus's life. His luxurious apartment, once a symbol of success, now seemed to shout about his wrong choices. In an impulsive decision, he started researching properties for sale near the neighborhood where Clara and the children lived. Not that he planned to move immediately, but the idea of being closer to them began to consume his thoughts. On Thursday, he received an urgent call from New York. A billion-dollar negotiation that he had coordinated months before was about to close. They needed him for the final signing of the contract. In the past, he would have been on his way to the airport without thinking twice. Now, the prospect of leaving LA, even for a few days, caused him inexplicable anxiety. "I can't go," he said into the phone, to the astonishment of his partners. "Send the documents via email. I'll do a video conference." The decision caused a small corporate earthquake, but for the first time in his life, Marcus didn't care about the professional consequences of his personal choices. On the night before the park meeting, Marcus spent hours at a toy store. He wanted to buy gifts for the children, but remembered Clara's words about it not being about money. He opted for more meaningful choices: a professional art kit for Grace, a leather soccer ball for Liam, and a collection of chapter books for Owen. Still, he hesitated before wrapping them, afraid he might seem like he was trying to buy his children's affection. Meanwhile, on his desk, a pile of important contracts awaited his signature. His assistant was calling constantly, worried about the deadlines and commitments Marcus was ignoring. "Reorganize my schedule," he instructed. "From now on, no commitments on Sundays, and I want my mornings free so I can take the children." He stopped mid-sentence, realizing he was about to reveal something that still needed to be kept quiet. On Sunday, he arrived at the park an hour before the meeting. He watched other families arrive, fathers playing with their children, and felt a pang of envy at their normalcy. What would it have been like if he hadn't left, if he had been present from the beginning? He imagined teaching the twins to walk, reading bedtime stories, comforting them after a nightmare. Clara arrived punctually with the children, who ran toward him as soon as they saw him. Marcus's heart soared at that spontaneous display of affection. Grace immediately opened her sketchpad to show him her new creations. Liam started talking about a soccer game he'd watched, and Owen, more reserved but equally enthusiastic, clutched a new book he wanted to share. "I brought something for you," Marcus said anxiously, looking at Clara for approval. She nodded slightly, though her eyes showed a hint of worry. The children were delighted with the gifts, but what surprised Marcus most was their reaction after the initial excitement. Instead of dispersing with their new toys, they insisted he participate. Grace wanted him to learn to draw with her, Liam begged for a soccer game, and Owen asked him to read a story. "You have your hands full with them," Clara commented, as they watched the children play later. "They've already attached themselves to you. They are incredible," Marcus replied, his voice choked. "How did you do it, Clara? Raising 3 children alone, giving them so much love and attention." "I didn't have a choice," she replied simply. "When you left, I discovered a strength I didn't know I had. Every time one of them got sick, every bill that needed to be paid, every difficult moment, I just kept going." Marcus felt the weight of his guilt grow in his chest. "I plan to tell them the truth," he said after a moment of silence. "But I want to do it the right way. I want them to get to know me first, to trust me." Clara studied him for a long moment before responding. "They are young, but they are smart. Owen already asked me why you look so much like them. And Liam? What about him? He spent the entire week talking about you, asking if you would show up today." The afternoon passed quickly among games, stories, and laughter. Marcus discovered that Grace had a natural talent for colors and shapes, that Liam could spend hours kicking a ball without getting tired, and that Owen knew entire passages of his favorite books by heart. When the sun began to set, signaling the end of the day at the park, Marcus felt a familiar sadness approaching. It was different from the melancholy he felt after closing big deals. That emptiness that no professional success could fill. It was the pain of having to say goodbye, even temporarily, to a part of himself that he had just discovered. "Are you coming back next week?" Liam asked, his eyes shining with hope. "Yes, I am," Marcus replied firmly. "And what if, please, I could show up before that, too? Maybe grab ice cream after school." The children's faces lit up at the suggestion, and they looked at Clara with pleading eyes. She hesitated for a moment, but eventually agreed. Interactive question and seat. Clara is taking a huge risk trusting Marcus again. What boundary would you set before letting the biological father back into your children's lives? Share your advice in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more emotional turning points. The following week established a new routine in Marcus's life. Every afternoon after school, he met the children at the ice cream parlor near their house. The owner, Mr. Peterson, already started preparing their favorite flavors as soon as he saw them coming. Chocolate with strawberry for Grace, mint chip for Liam, and vanilla with caramel sauce for Owen. On the fourth week, during one of those meetups, something unexpected happened. Owen, who was usually the quietest of the three, surprised everyone with a direct question. "Why do you have the same eyes as us?" Marcus's ice cream stopped halfway to his mouth. Clara, who always accompanied the meetings discreetly from a nearby table, visibly tensed. Liam and Grace stopped eating their ice cream, suddenly interested in the answer. "Is it true?" Grace exclaimed, leaning closer to examine Marcus's face better. "And your smile is the same as Liam's, too." Marcus felt his heart race. He looked at Clara, who nodded slightly. It was time for the truth. Taking a deep breath, he began. "Kids, there's something very important I need to tell you." The three children stared at him expectantly, their ice cream momentarily forgotten. Marcus continued, choosing every word carefully. "You know that all families are different, right? Some kids live only with their mom, others only with their dad. Some with both. We live only with Mom." "Yes, we do," Liam interrupted, proud to contribute to the conversation. "Yes," Marcus agreed, feeling a lump in his throat. "But I am your father." The silence that followed was deafening. Owen adjusted his glasses, as he always did when processing difficult information. Liam shook his head, confused. Grace looked from Marcus to Clara for confirmation. "Mommy?" Grace called, her voice small and uncertain. Clara rose from her table and approached, sitting down with them. "It's true, my loves. Julian is your father. But why weren't you ever here before?" Liam asked. His voice carried a mixture of curiosity and hurt. The question hit Marcus like a punch to the gut. How could he explain 5 years of absence to a 4-year-old? How could he justify choosing meetings and contracts over first steps and words? "I made a huge mistake," Marcus began, his voice choked. "I went to work very far away, in another country, and I was so focused on my job that I missed the most important things in life. You." Owen, who had remained silent, finally spoke. Like the little prince when he left his rose. Marcus felt tears welling up in his eyes. "Exactly like the little prince. Sometimes it takes time to understand what is truly important." Grace, always the most emotional of the three, already had tears streaming down her face. "Are you going to leave again?" "No," Marcus replied firmly. opening his arms for a hug. "Never again, I promise." Liam, still processing the information, asked, "So, can we call you Dad?" "If you want to," Marcus replied, his voice trembling. "But it doesn't have to be now. You can call me whatever makes you comfortable." The rest of the afternoon was a roller coaster of emotions. The children alternated between moments of intense curiosity, asking thousands of questions about where Marcus lived, why he left, and if he knew other countries, and periods of reflective silence. Clara watched everything with a mixture of apprehension and hope. She could see the sincerity in Marcus's eyes, the genuine love he showed for the children, but she also knew the pain of abandonment and feared her children might one day feel the same. The breaking point. Pneumonia and a real father. The first major test of the new family routine came 2 weeks later, when Owen woke up with a high fever. It was early morning when Clara called Marcus. Her voice was strained on the phone. "Marcus, I'm sorry to call so early, but Owen has a 103-degree fever and won't stop coughing. I need to take him to the hospital, but I can't leave Liam and Grace alone." "I'm on my way," Marcus replied without hesitation, already pulling on the first clothes he found. He arrived at the apartment in record time, finding Clara ready to leave with Owen in her arms. The boy was pale, his eyes glazed with fever, and his chest rose and fell with a difficult cough that frightened Marcus. "Daddy?" Owen called out weakly, reaching a hand out to Marcus. "I'm here, son," Marcus replied, taking Owen from Clara's arms. The child's feverish heat alarmed him even more. "The girls are sleeping, but they might wake up scared if they don't find anyone home." "Of course, go," Marcus urged, passing Owen back to her. "Keep me informed, please." After they left, Marcus sat on the sofa in the small living room, feeling strangely out of place in that familiar setting during the morning. The apartment was silent, except for the ticking of the kitchen clock and the gentle breathing coming from the children's room. At 5 a.m., Grace appeared in the living room, her sleepy eyes widening when she saw Marcus. "Where's Mommy? Where's Owen?" she asked, a tone of worry in her childish voice. Marcus hugged her close, explaining calmly. "Owen wasn't feeling well, so Mom took him to the doctor. But don't worry, they should be back soon." Grace snuggled into his chest, something she had never done before. "Will Owen be okay?" "Yes, Princess, your brother is strong." Liam woke up next, equally confused by the situation. The two children sat with Marcus on the sofa, one on each side, while he tried to distract them by telling stories. But he could feel their worry for their brother. "What if we drew a picture for Owen?" Marcus suggested, remembering how Grace expressed herself through art. The suggestion cheered the children. Soon, the living room table was covered with paper and crayons. Grace drew Owen as a superhero, fighting colorful germs, while Liam drew a soccer field where the three siblings played together. At 7 a.m., Clara finally called. Owen had pneumonia, the same condition that had hospitalized him 2 years prior. He would need to stay overnight for a few days. "The girls need to go to school," Clara said, sounding exhausted. "Can you take them? I'm staying here with Owen." "Done," Marcus replied. "And Clara, what can I bring for you?" There was a pause on the other side of the line. "A change of clothes for Owen is in the second drawer by the bed. And maybe the book he was reading is on the nightstand." Marcus helped Liam and Grace get ready for school, discovering in the process how complicated it was to coordinate 2 4-year-olds. Lost socks, mismatched uniforms, and messy hair created small crises he had to learn to solve on the spot. "This isn't the clip Mom uses," Grace complained when he tried to clip her hair. "Then teach me," Marcus asked humbly. "How does Mom do it?" Grace, patient as a little teacher, showed him how Clara styled her hair every morning. Liam, in turn, insisted his shoelaces be tied in a specific way that only Clara knew how to do. After dropping the children off at school, Marcus went home to change and then headed to the hospital. He found Clara dozing uncomfortably in a chair next to Owen's bed, who was sleeping with an oxygen mask. "Go home and rest," Marcus said softly. "I'll stay with him." Clara hesitated, but the exhaustion was visible on her face. "Call me if anything happens." "Will do. And don't worry about Liam and Grace. I'll pick them up from school and stay with them until you return." When Owen woke up a few hours later, he smiled faintly when he saw Marcus beside him. "Hi, Daddy," he said weakly. "Hi, champ. I brought some things for you." Marcus showed him the book he was reading and the drawings made by his siblings. Owen's eyes filled with tears when he saw the artwork. "I miss them." "They miss you too, but soon you'll be back home." Over the next few hours, Marcus read stories to Owen, helped him drink water, and learned from the nurses how to check his temperature and adjust the oxygen mask. Every small act of care was a new lesson in fatherhood. In the evening, after Clara returned rested, Marcus picked up Liam and Grace from school. The children were anxious for news of their brother. "Can we visit him?" Liam asked hopefully. "Not yet, son. But how about recording a video for him?" The suggestion was met with enthusiasm. Marcus helped the children record a loving message for their brother, with Liam making silly faces to make Owen laugh, and Grace singing a song they used to sing together. That night, after Liam and Grace finally went to sleep, Marcus sat between their beds, watching their peaceful breathing. Owen's fragility in the hospital had made him realize more than ever how much those 3 little lives were the center of his universe. His phone vibrated with a message from Clara, a photo of Owen sleeping, clutching his siblings' drawings. "Fever is down. Doctor says he's responding well to treatment." Marcus sighed in relief, feeling for the first time the true weight of fatherhood. That mixture of unconditional love and constant fear that every parent carries in their heart. The permanent bridge. Choosing family. After 3 days in the hospital, Owen was finally discharged. Marcus insisted on accompanying Clara to pick up their son, and together they prepared a small surprise. When they opened the apartment door, Liam and Grace were waiting with a colorful banner that read, "Welcome back, Owen," decorated with drawings and glitter. "You made this for me?" Owen asked, his voice still a little weak, but his eyes shining with emotion. "We did!" Grace exclaimed proudly. "Daddy helped us hang it up because we couldn't reach." The natural use of the word "daddy" by Grace made Marcus smile. During the hospital stay, something had fundamentally changed in his relationship with the children. The shared worry for Owen, the sleepless nights caring for Liam and Grace, the small routines he had to learn, all of it had created an intimacy that hadn't existed before. "Look what I brought for you," Marcus said, handing a package to Owen. It was a special edition of The Little Prince, with embossed illustrations and an elegant hardcover. "Wow," Owen exclaimed, his fingers tracing the pages delicately. "Can I read it now?" "First, you need to rest a bit," Clara gently intervened. "Afterwards, we can all read together." Marcus watched as Clara helped Owen settle onto the sofa, covering him with a light blanket. Liam and Grace sat close to their brother, as if afraid he might disappear if they stayed too far away. "Marcus," Clara called softly, gesturing for him to follow her into the kitchen. "I need to thank you for everything. I never imagined you would." "You don't need to thank me," Marcus interrupted gently. "They are my children too. I only regret not being present sooner." Clara studied him for a moment before speaking. "You really have changed. I had to lose everything to understand what truly mattered," Marcus replied, looking at the children in the living room. "I don't just want to make up for lost time. I want to be part of their lives from now on. For real." Just then, they were interrupted by a call from Grace. "Daddy, Mommy, come see what Owen is drawing." Marcus and Clara returned to the living room, where Owen had begun an elaborate drawing. It was a representation of the family, but different from the usual. It showed everyone in the hospital, including Marcus, holding his hand while he slept. "Is that from when you stayed with me reading stories?" Owen explained shyly. Marcus felt a lump in his throat. I can keep this drawing? No, Owen replied, surprising everyone. I want it to stay here on the wall of the room, along with the other family drawings. The simplicity of that statement hit Marcus profoundly. His son didn't want the drawing to go to the luxurious apartment where he lived alone. He wanted it to stay there, in that small apartment full of love and memories. You know what? Marcus began, sitting on the floor next to the children. I was thinking of looking for a bigger apartment, closer to here, a place where you could have your own rooms when you want to stay with me. With a pool? Liam asked excitedly. With space to draw? Grace added. With a library? Owen completed, his eyes shining even through his tired expression. Marcus laughed. We'll see what we find. But the most important thing is that it's close by, so we can always see each other. Clara watched the scene with mixed emotions. Part of her still feared that all this was temporary, that Marcus might eventually tire of family life and return to his world of international business. But another part, the part that saw the shine in her children's eyes and the sincerity in his actions, was beginning to believe that the change was real. Oh, Liam called suddenly. Can you sleep here tonight? To take care of Owen? The question surprised everyone. Marcus looked at Clara, who, after a moment of hesitation, nodded slightly. I can sleep on the sofa? He suggested. No, Grace protested. It has to be in our room to read us a story so we can fall asleep. And so, that night, Marcus found himself sitting on the floor between the 3 beds, reading The Little Prince to his children. Liam fell asleep first, followed by Grace, who bravely tried to keep her eyes open until the end of the chapter. Owen resisted a little longer, but the fatigue of the illness overcame him. Marcus remained there for a long time, watching his 3 little miracles sleep. In the next room, he could hear Clara making up the sofa for him. The whole situation was surreal. He, the millionaire businessman, choosing to sleep on the floor of a modest apartment rather than return to his luxurious penthouse. But there, in that moment, Marcus understood that he was exactly where he should be. The true luxury wasn't in the expensive furniture or imported cars, but in the soft sounds and breathing of his children, the colorful drawings on the walls, and the certainty that he had finally found his true home. In the weeks that followed Owen's recovery, Marcus began actively searching for a new place to live. After visiting several apartments, he found one that seemed perfect, a family building just 3 blocks from Clara's apartment, with a recreation area that included a pool and a small playground. Before closing the deal, he did something he never would have considered in his previous life. He took the children and Clara to see the apartment and give their opinions. It's huge, Liam exclaimed, running through the empty rooms. Grace was already planning where to put her art corner. Dad, can I have a table just for drawing here? Owen, still a bit pale from the illness but recovering, carefully inspected what would be the library. How many books fit here? Clara watched everything with a thoughtful look. The apartment was spacious without being ostentatious. It had 3 bedrooms, 1 for each child, and a cozy social area. It was clear that Marcus had considered the children's needs when choosing it. What do you think? Marcus asked, anxious for the family's approval. I like it, Owen said first, surprising everyone with his quick opinion. You can see the sun from here. And there's room for us to play, Liam added, already tossing an imaginary ball across the living room. Can I paint the walls of my room? Grace asked hopefully. Marcus looked at Clara before answering. She gave a small smile and nodded slightly. Of course, Princess. Everyone can decorate their room however they want. The move happened gradually over the following weeks. Marcus involved the children in every decision, from the color of the walls to the choice of furniture. Grace insisted on rainbow wallpaper for her room. Liam wanted everything in his favorite soccer team colors, and Owen asked for floor-to-ceiling shelves for his books. One day, while organizing the rooms, Grace asked a question that caught Marcus by surprise. Dad, Why don't you live with us in our house?" The silence that followed was heavy. Marcus sat on the edge of Grace's new bed, thinking carefully about how to respond. "Sometimes," he began, "adults make mistakes. I made a lot of mistakes when you were very little. I was so worried about working and making money that I forgot what was truly important." "Us?" Liam asked, pausing his organizing to join the conversation. "Yes, you. And your mother." Marcus took a deep breath before continuing. "Because of my mistakes, your mother and I decided not to live together anymore. But that doesn't mean I love you less. In fact, now I understand that you are the most important thing in my life." Owen, who was organizing his books alphabetically, a habit he had inherited from his father, intervened again. "Like the little prince when he returned to the rose." Marcus smiled at the analogy that had become so meaningful between them. "Exactly. Sometimes we need to get lost to find our way back to what really matters." "But you won't leave again, will you?" Grace asked, her large eyes full of worry. "Never again," Marcus promised, pulling her in for a hug. "That's why I bought this apartment close to you, so I can always be nearby." Liam, ever practical, had an idea. "We could build a bridge." "A bridge?" Marcus asked, confused. "Yes, a bridge between our house and yours. Like in Owen's book, where a prince builds bridges to get to places." The simplicity of the children's logic made Marcus smile. "You know, that's a great idea. We can't build a real bridge, but we can create our own paths to stay connected forever." That night, after the children returned home with Clara, Marcus was left alone in the new apartment. The walls still smelled of fresh paint, and the new furniture still had tags. But it was no longer just an empty space. It was full of dreams and plans. On the living room wall, he had created a mural with photos and drawings of the children. There was the first drawing Grace made for him, a photo of the three of them at the park, the drawing Owen made in the hospital, and several other memories they had already built together. His phone buzzed. It was a message from Clara with a photo of the children already in pajamas, holding a sign they had made. "Good night, Dad. More tomorrow." Marcus sat on his new sofa, looking out the window at the path that led to Clara's apartment. Liam was right. They needed bridges. Not physical bridges, but emotional connections that would allow their family, even living in separate homes, to remain united by love. In his newly assembled library, the special edition of The Little Prince occupied a prominent place. Marcus picked up the book and reread the passage about the rose. How the prince had to leave to understand the value of what he had left behind. Now he understood that feeling perfectly. Before sleeping, he sent a message to Clara. "Thank you for not giving up on showing the children that love is more important than anything else. They are our bridge." Meaningful ending. The true treasure. Meaningful ending and final call to action. CTA. 6 months after his return to Los Angeles, Marcus was sitting on a bench in Griffith Park, the very spot where the entire story began. This time, he wasn't alone. Owen was by his side, immersed in a new book. Grace was sketching the landscape in her notebook, and Liam was gently kicking a ball on the grass nearby, always within his father's sight. Clara approached, bringing ice cream for everyone, a Sunday tradition they had established in recent weeks. "Daddy," Grace called, licking her strawberry ice cream. "Tell us again the story of how you found us." Marcus exchanged a knowing look with Clara before beginning. "It was right here, in this park. I had just returned from a long trip and was all important in my suit." "That's right," Liam interrupted, already knowing the story by heart. "I thought I had everything important in life. But then I heard Mom playing the guitar," Owen completed, setting down his book to join the family narrative. "And you found out we existed," Grace added with a bright smile. "It was the most important day of my life," Marcus concluded, hugging his 3 children. Clara watched the scene with a serene smile. Time had transformed their old romance into a mature form of affection, a sincere bond based on the children's well-being and the mutual respect they had built. "You know what?" Owen said thoughtfully. "It's like in The Little Prince. Sometimes we need to go around the entire universe to discover that the treasure was where we started." Marcus felt his eyes mist up. It was incredible how his son could translate such profound truths into simple words. Marcus Sterling, no longer just a millionaire businessman, but now primarily dad to Owen, Liam, and Grace, finally understood that he had found his place in the world. Not in the New York skyscrapers or the elegant boardrooms, but right there, among children's laughter and Sunday ice cream, between children's books and soccer balls, between colorful drawings and tight hugs. It was a different ending than he had planned for his life, but it was, without a doubt, the happiest ending he could have found. Interactive questions and Vinilta. What is your favorite lesson from The Little Prince? Do you believe Marcus's choice to prioritize family over his empire is the true definition of success? If this story about second chances and finding true wealth resonated with you, hit the like button, share it with a friend, and subscribe to the channel for more life-changing stories. We'll see you in the next video.